Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, host of the Riderflex podcast and founder and CEO of our day job recruiting firm, Riderflex. We hope you enjoy this episode. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the podcast for updates and news. Finally, if you haven't already, check out the series of books we've published on hiring, interviewing, and overall career advice titled The Riderflex Guide, available on Amazon. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Most homeowners don't have the time or expertise to properly take care of their home, which causes costly issues to arise. That's where Cura Home Maintenance comes in. We're a full-service, routine maintenance company that was developed by a certified home inspector. Each quarter, we service our clients' homes following manufacturer's recommendations to properly maintain all the necessary appliances. We provide the materials and expertise to prolong the life of your property, creating a healthy and efficient environment for your family. From top to bottom, we'll maintain and service your home. To get started, we have a property inspection to determine what needs to be maintained, and a maintenance plan is created based on your preferences. From refrigerator coils to filters, vents, and drains, we do it all, and we do it well. Contact us today for your free routine maintenance inspection, and never worry about your maintenance again.
Well, Sebastian, the first thing I want to ask you now, is that a fresh, is that how many days are you on there? Is that where are we at here?
Well, I think this one is just 2 days old, maybe yesterday.
Okay.
So
are you a once a week guy or what are you?
I'm a once, maybe twice. It's kind of just depends on if I'm seeing anybody or how slick I want to be.
I understand. Now, and when you do the top, you usually trim here the same time, trim this up. Is that
Yep. I try to clean it all up, once or twice a week.
Remember when we didn't have to worry about hair growing out of our ears and on top of that? Remember, why do I have to worry about that now? I look in the mirror, I'm like, oh God, this is,
I know. And then you look at your kids and they're just like, they just have hair, and
Yeah.
it's where it's supposed to be.
It's where it's supposed to be, right? Isn't that so true? Now
Yeah,
this is long for me. I usually
say, look, you got a few days on you there.
Yeah. I'm usually once a week, but I skipped last week. I can't even remember. Oh, I was in the mountains I was in the mountains, so I didn't get back in time to do
that's the Grizzly Adams look, right?
This is actually a little longer than usual. I want to give you a compliment too here, and I'm not just saying this because you could go back and look. You could go back and look at all 400 interviews I've done. I don't think I've ever told anybody this on a podcast because I think we're up to like 400 interviews now, which is crazy.
It's crazy.
And I may have mentioned this to you once before, but I want to say it publicly here. I visit with people for a living, right? I talk to people for a living, recruit people, or I'm selling something or selling recruiting services, whatever. And I'm 56, so I got some battle scars. I am amazed at the lack of people skills, the lack of EQ in the majority of people I talk to. So often, Sebastian, I will visit with folks, and I'm talking about friends, families, colleagues, business people, you name it, doesn't matter. So often I'll visit with them, and they will talk about themselves 90% of the time. Now, in this case, by the way, I'm interviewing you, so I want you to talk about yourself. But when I met you for dinner, they'll talk about themselves 90% of the time, and I'll ask them, "Oh, tell me about your kids, tell me about your family, blah blah blah," and then I'll get to the car and not one single question my way or Scott's way, my business partner. And Scott and I talk about this all the time. And I teach my sons about it. I constantly talking to my sons about it. And I have mentioned your name so many times since we met. I'm like, over the last few years, I can think of one or two people that actually made sure the conversation was balanced during dinner. And Sebastian is one of those people. And I wanted to say,
Well,
thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I will tell you, first of all, I'm genuinely curious about other people. I always want to know like what's going on in your life and how we came to have this moment together, your backstory that led us to this point. I know mine, I don't know yours. But I also think it's just a great way to break the ice and sort of whether it's a work situation or a social situation. You can walk into any room anywhere in the world with any group of people and immediately become part of that group just by asking questions and
That's it.
being genuinely curious,
And then listen.
right?
And
And
then
then
listen.
listen. Oh yeah, that. All right, I forgot about that. That's really important. So when my kids were younger, they were at that really those precious moments between pure childhood and the adulthood. So that period when you can completely control sort of what's going on with them, and that period where you can control absolutely nothing. It's sort of like 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. You've been there.
Oh,
And we
yes.
would take car trips, and I would say, "Look, this is a long trip. We're going to listen to stuff you want. We're going to listen to some stuff that I want. And so it's not going to be just all about you or all about me, but." And so I would always try to listen to books that had, sort of interesting, either great stories like Into Thin Air, that mountaineering book that John Krakauer wrote.
Mm.
But every now and then I would dust off one of these self-help jobs. And one of the books that we listened to together was How to Win Friends and Influence People.
One of the
And they still remember that,
best business books of all time. I mean,
right? The
yeah.
book's like 100 years old, and everybody should still make it a listen or a read.
Yes,
And
mandatory.
right,
Yep.
right. And so much of it is really just about that issue of being curious about what's happening for, the other side of the table. So,
Yep.
so our kids sort of will draw on that. And every now and then, in a moment of great parental pride, they'll say to me, I just went to this reception or this thing, and man, I was just thinking about how much I hated listening to How to Win Friends and Influence People, but at the time, but I did
Yeah.
pull some tricks out of there, and it really helped me. It's like, okay, good.
No doubt. No
Yeah.
doubt. It will help you tremendously in the business world. And if you're listening out there to this episode, I would encourage you to, I think the best way to work on this, that you work the self-improvement around this, is to really just monitor yourself. Just ask yourself, wow, okay, I just spent 10 minutes with Johnny. How many of those minutes were about me versus Johnny? And just kind of ask yourself when you walk away. And most people would be surprised. Most people would be surprised. Interesting. You were mentioning your kids. So my youngest son, Spencer, was at a BNI meeting with me. It's one of these networking meetings. And he was a guest. And he came into the meeting. And at these little conference meetings thing, it's before and after the meeting is where the magic happens, right? Where you're doing the small talk.
Right.
And man, he walked in the room with me, Sebastian, and immediately he left my side and just started walking over and just started shaking hands and talking and asking people questions. And I'm looking at him across the room. I'm like, okay, this is good. This is good. I'm feeling good here.
Yeah. He's going to be all right.
He's going to be all right. But anyway, thank you. Yeah, that I have not forgotten that dinner we had. And Scott and I were just really impressed. Not to mention, I don't want to embarrass you here. I don't mean to just flatter you too much, but the other thing that was interesting about that is I've also had a relationship with a lot of Ivy League, well-educated folks. And, sometimes if you get a master's degree from Columbia, there's a little bit of a air about you. But that's not on you at all, just so you know. I mean, you wouldn't even know. Like if you were at a conference full of welders and you were just wearing some jeans and a t-shirt, like you would never know. You'd never know.
I appreciate that. Actually, I do appreciate it. Take that as a high compliment, and that's great.
Yeah.
Actually,
tell the listeners, a lot of this, I'm guessing a lot of this came from your parents. So let's start there. Tell me about parents, siblings, and some early childhood stuff.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a very traditional Catholic American family. Both of my parents are Brooklynites by birth and by upbringing. And so they, we just had a very culturally close family. And it wasn't like, you were told that you were loved, but more importantly, you knew that you were loved. And so it almost didn't have to be stated, although it certainly was. And there was no shortage of hugs to go around, but it wasn't over the top. And so I just grew up in this environment where, growing up as a kid, you just don't think about it. And I felt very safe in the environment where I was the fifth of six kids, by the way, the fifth of five boys.
Okay.
Followed 11 months later by my sister, who immediately stole all my attention. And I still joke that I'm bitter and, haven't recovered. Makes me an angrier old man. But we're actually really close, and we're very different, but we remain close. Two of my siblings have passed away, unfortunately. One at a very young age. He was in a motorcycle accident when I was 16 and he was 18. And that was certainly a defining moment for our family. It was, like a meteor falling out of the sky. And it really, I think, brought us all closer together, and we remain very close to this day. My father passed away also a long time ago. But I just was with my mother for her 90th birthday week celebration.
Cool.
And my other siblings were there, and we just had a great time. So I would say I grew up, very much navigating the world of being one of six, not a ton of attention on me, and having to kind of take care of myself. But, what's important, take care of business, take care of school, stay out of trouble, and pretty much people will leave you alone. That was the sort of the lesson of my childhood. Like, stay out of jail, get decent grades, right? Don't do anything epically stupid, and you're probably going to be okay.
Any jail time, by the way, in high school or college? Did you ever get arrested? Were you ever arrested for anything?
I was detained once by the police outside of suburban Philadelphia. It involved a car full of not entirely sober rugby players. The driver was sober, I will say, but there was a little too much commotion going on, and there might have been some squirt guns and some bad decision making. But once the police confirmed two important facts, we were all let go. Important fact number one, the driver was sober. Okay. Important fact number two, all the armory in the car had water in it, and that was all it could ever have. So it was a very short experience, but it definitely got my attention.
Did you play rugby at St. Joseph's, or was this Yeah,
I was at St. Joe's. I played rugby for 4 years there, and I played about 10 years after college in men's leagues. I was a volunteer after college in American Samoa for 2 years.
Cool.
And I played rugby down there with some very large and some incredibly aggressive Samoans. And then when I went back to the DC area, I played there for a few more years. Yeah.
Do you have lingering effects? Do you have like bad knees, bad legs, bad back? I mean, do you have things where you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh shit, that hurts?
Yeah, I have fingers that are bent the wrong way. I have some scars. And miraculously, my knees and my hips survived. My back, not so much. My back is perennially cranky. But yeah, I woke up one day as a 30-something, early 30s, after playing, and I could barely walk. And I thought, this is getting to be stupid because I have no health insurance, and I am putting myself at grave risk every Saturday. So I finally hung up my spikes.
Now, you majored in political science. Were you going to be a lawyer? Was that like a pre-law thing for you? What was the plan?
Yeah, it was an I don't really know what I'm going to do thing, but I know that I like this.
Okay.
I wasn't wildly academic, but I enjoyed reading, and I enjoyed global politics, and I just enjoyed political science generally. So
I see.
Was really focusing on international relations and political science as an undergrad without knowing where that might lead.
Okay. No specific plan. That's, of course, at that age, none of us really have a plan, do we?
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, I
Uh,
certainly didn't.
did you, now you didn't go get your master's right after. There's a little bit of a gap there, right?
Yeah, so I went to Samoa for 2 years, American Samoa, and
Okay.
then I went back to Washington, D.C. area, which is where I had gone to high school.
Okay.
And I worked for 2 years on Capitol Hill, worked
Cool.
for a couple of congressmen. And from there, one of the congressmen I worked for was the chairman of one of the appropriations subcommittees, Interior Appropriations. And what I figured out, I was sort of a lowly legislative assistant, make me a cup of coffee, write me a letter to a constituent, stay out of my way, please. I think I was making like $18,000 a year. I don't know what I did with all of it, but I didn't save anything. But I really observed what was happening on Capitol Hill, and I took away two things. One is I probably didn't want a life in politics after I saw what that really was like up close. It's a world that you really got to have a stomach for all the
Money.
socializing and all of the schmoozing and raising
Uh,
money. And the other thing was that the people who were really making the decisions about allocation of resources within these appropriations committees, which is where our federal budget is created, they all had advanced degrees, either public policy, public finance, MBAs,
I see.
law degrees, whatever. And I thought I should do that. I don't feel ready for level of engagement that I want that I see with these people. And so I talked to a couple of the higher level people that I got to know on the committee staff, and they recommended a school for public administration. So that's what led me to pursue that master's degree.
And then you got into Columbia, which is not easy to do. Your grades must have been pretty good.
Well, I will tell you it was an anomaly, and I bet if I had to do it all over again, I'm not sure I could get in. But at the time, there was a federal program that had gone to a bunch of schools to support people getting into public service.
Okay.
And so
Oh,
why that mattered was because one of the things that Columbia was looking for, they were looking for appropriate grantees for this fund and for these grants. And I had demonstrated through 4 years of either no pay or very low pay public service work that I was committed. And so I got in and I got a scholarship, and it was an amazing thing because I was planning on going to a state school. Actually, I was going to go to University of Wisconsin in Madison
okay.
because I liked it there. I got in, and it was cheaper than Columbia or Penn, which were the other places I had applied to.
And at that time, did you know you were going to go ahead and get your law degree afterwards, or you didn't? That wasn't quite. Yeah.
No, that didn't quite happen for me there. But what happened was while I was at Columbia, I started working for the city of New York.
Okay.
And I was working for, at the time, Mayor Dinkins, which was the early 90s. He followed the longtime, and very well-known Ed Koch. But what I discovered was that a lot of the decisions that were happening there at the political level locally were being made by lawyers. And so
Nah.
okay, I'll get a law degree. Well, it also, one of the professors that I had befriended, a fellow Italian at Columbia, had become the dean of the law school at Yeshiva University
All right.
in New York, which is the Cardozo Law School. I'm not Jewish. I don't play a Jewish person on TV. I had very little interaction with that culturally or even friends wise, because I'd gone to a Catholic undergraduate. But he said you should come. He was a Catholic guy as the dean of Yeshiva University's law school. He said you should come, and so I did. I did that for a year, but even with the generous financial support I got there, I couldn't afford to do that law school program and not leave with significant debt. So I transitioned to a night program. I went back to Virginia, went to George Mason State
Okay.
School.
Okay.
And I worked. I got another job down there working in housing and finance, and then I basically went to law school at night and worked by day, and somewhere in there met a woman who became my wife, and the rest is kind of history. So,
What's your wife's name?
Tegan, like Megan with a T.
Tegan. Okay. How did you meet
Yeah.
her? Can you tell the story?
Sure. So she was at the time a graduate student herself. She was going to Gallaudet University in Washington studying sign language. She's hearing, but she was an early childhood educator, and she had been connected to the deaf community and really wanted to pursue a career in that space. And so she was going to school at Gallaudet. I was going to school at George Mason. We met in Alaska. She was up there for the summer working with a family that had deaf kids. So she had some grant to support her work, literally living in a trailer with this family in the middle of nowhere, rural Alaska, 2 hearing parents, 2 deaf kids. And at the end of her time, she did that for 2 or 3 months. And when she was done, she was traveling around Southeast Alaska. And I had taken 3 weeks off before my fall semester started. At the end of the summer, I was traveling around up there with a friend of mine, camping. And
cool.
we had come out of the woods after a couple of weeks of being in a very small, stinky tent. We decided to splurge on a bed and breakfast or some kind of youth hostel. I forget, it was a communal type of place, but it was a roof with a shower and a bed. And it was like, the Ritz. And so we were in this place, and I see this cute girl walking around. And by the way, any female at that point was incredibly interesting compared to the very stinky guy I'd been camping with. And she had a Gallaudet sweatshirt on. And so we started talking, and, really, truly the rest is history.
Wow.
We met in August, we got engaged in November, and we got married the following July. So we didn't even know each other for a year before we got married.
How about that? How long you've been married now? How many years?
28 years.
28 years. And how many kids?
Yeah. Three
children, all grown?
Grown-ish. They're 25, 23, and 21. So they're grown.
You still got, so there's some that are still siphoning off some cash. Not everybody's totally on their own yet financially.
Nobody's on their own. The 2 older ones they just started business school at CU in August. So they're both students again. And our daughter is a senior at Denver University. So
okay. All right. Yeah.
She's probably going to be the first one to be fully independent is what I foresee.
It is amazing how little money Kim and I can live on once all 4 kids were completely financially independent and nobody, no insurances, no just nothing, right? It's totally on their own. I remember the first year or 2, I was like, wow, we spend very little money. Holy cow.
Yeah, well, right. Your food bill's down, all the other ancillary stuff. So, it's okay. They're being productive in their way, and they're on some form of their own journey, and it's all good.
That's good. Anybody at home?
Nobody's at home. We just had to put down our second dog in 2 years.
I'm sorry.
He was a 14-year-old Labradoodle, so had a really great life, and it was very clear he was done. Okay. So we don't no dogs, no kids, a couple of plants. I'm still arguing we should get rid of, but hey, we'll take care of the plants.
Now that you're an empty nester, I know we'll get into work stuff, but now that you're an empty nester, what are your hobbies outside of work? What is Sebastian's focus besides work? The kids are kind of doing their own thing besides work. What are you doing to keep yourself?
Well, I don't feel like I have trouble keeping myself busy. Work consumes a lot of my time and energy, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But I play hockey 2 or 3 times a week with a group of over 50 somethings.
All right.
I played this morning, as a matter of fact, and we had some guests with us who are from this over 80 club.
Whoa.
So I was skating this morning with 3 guys, the oldest of which is 86, and I think the youngest was 82.
Holy cow. They're
So
still moving around. They're still moving around.
it's incredible. So I just turned 60 and I'm a youngster with those guys.
Can you check? I mean, what do you feel bad? Like if you
No.
give a little check, do you feel, I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, no, it's you're fully padded up and you're on the ice, so it's all that, but it's no checking, and it's a
okay.
gentleman's game, you know. So if somebody gets hit and they go down, we just stop and make sure they're okay.
Okay.
And you know, we do have injuries. You know, we have the occasional concussion, or which we have a couple people out right now with that, and shoulders and knees, but mostly it's a very friendly game, and if anybody gets hurt, it's purely accidental.
Okay. Very good.
So I do that. I also spend a lot of time riding my bike, and which is kind of a meditative experience.
All right.
I live in the foothills. I'm fortunate to live where I can ride out my back door and be on kind of country roads, gravel roads, going up into the mountains pretty easily, and I do that a lot.
Nice.
And then I just kind of run around with my wife. She is very passionate about pickleball, so I'm trying to keep up with her there now.
That's a thing now, right? That's hot, right?
It's
I
a thing.
guess.
Yeah. You need to check that out.
I've been told. I definitely will. The only reason I haven't done it already is because I just haven't been in the right place. If I'm at a gathering and there's people playing, oh yeah, I'll get out there. I just haven't had a chance to. Now, you haven't graduated to the e-bike yet, have you? You still got like a regular mountain bike, or have you?
I did just graduate. I do have a regular bike that is not electronic in any way, which is the bike I really love. But my wife got me an e-bike for my 60th birthday, so we can ride around town and just kind of, you know, do that thing together, and it's really nice.
Okay, so I'm going to confess too. Now, I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but yeah, I have a Trek Powerfly 4 e-bike, mountain bike.
Okay.
And Sebastian, I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. In fact, I bought an extra battery. I ordered an extra battery because when I go up to the mountains, and I go all the time, and I'll go on these forest roads, and a couple of times 2 years ago, I got caught with my juice ran out, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm 6 miles from camp, and it's like this, you know. I came back and I went up to Shields over here in Johnstown, and I was like, I need another battery. And he's like, hey man, those batteries are like $1,000. I was like, I don't care. I want another battery. Order me another battery.
Yeah. You don't want to run out of power.
I don't want to run out of juice. Not on forest roads. I mean, no, I can't. So now when I'm up there, I have this whole extra battery, like it's hanging on the back. And I absolutely love it. I love it. And of course, my battery goes down pretty fast because I'm on turbo like 80% of the time.
Because you use it. Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's totally
that's very different than my electric bike experience. But I've heard, I'm not a mountain biker, but we have some friends here who are, and they swear by the e-mountain bikes because, I'm sure the reason you do, it's like just great to be having that extra boost going up some of the crazy stuff that you go up.
No doubt. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. By the way, we have to go up to the mountains together eventually, me and you.
I know. I really would love to. I see the stuff that you're posting and I'm like, man, that looks really nice.
You know, the only thing that's gotten weird now is I got Starlink 2 seasons ago. I guess I had it last year and this year. Last season, this last summer that just passed. So now, instead of fully escaping and disconnecting, now I take the Starlink. And so then what I'll do is I get my camp all set up, and I'm like, okay, let me check email, and then I'll go for a mountain bike ride, and then I'll come back, let me check email, and I say, and I'm like,
It's funny you mention that because I've seen your post before. I love your setup. It looks really great.
Thank you.
And I've wondered about that because I'm thinking, you know, this guy's in the middle of nowhere. And of course, the beauty of being in the middle of nowhere is you're disconnected from all the crazy stuff that we all are connected to all the time.
Yes.
But the Starlink kind of, eliminates that aspect of it.
It's an emotional mental battle within myself the last the last couple of seasons. I'm trying to find a balance. But anyway, okay, let's so you had a great career, by the way, before Archway Communities. How about let's do this? Instead of touching every single stop or whatever, just kind of give us a little career overview summary,
Sure,
and then we'll bounce into Archway. Is that okay?
sure. Yeah, yeah. So in the beginning, uh, let me share with you my first resume. No, I was really fortunate, Steve, the way things worked out for me. In hindsight, you can look at it all and think, oh, there was a path there that was followed, but it was really um, kind of accidental, semi-intentional. When I was younger, I really tried to put myself in a position to have these interesting opportunities. Grad school was great. That led to this really interesting position with the city of New York, which really led me to law school in its way. And then through a grad school connection, I got a job at another housing organization in the DC area.
Okay.
And that's what I was doing, international work. Actually, I spent a lot of time in Gaza and the West Bank, just as pure coincidence, in the early 90s, working on housing programs in the Middle East there,
Right.
Central America, Eastern Europe.
Mm.
Now, that was interesting and I loved it. However, I was in law school at the time. So these things were not compatible. But nevertheless, I did that for a few years. And then when I finished law school, I had been married and or got married that same year.
Okay.
And then got involved in domestic affordable housing and sort of multifamily finance. Anyway, when the dust settled, I had started a real estate development company in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
It was a consulting firm that led to development. And at one point, I was looking for capital partners, and one of the prospects I met said, in effect, "Hey, I'll help capitalize your business, but I also wouldn't mind if you'd be interested in helping me raise capital from the capital markets, from the banking world, to help support our investment banking work."
I see. That's how
So
it happened. Okay. That's how it
yeah,
happened.
so it
Got
really, so I had a partner, still have a partner in that business, and she really liked the real estate side of it, and I was very drawn to the capital market side of it. So I went over and started with this tax credit equity syndication.
I see.
Yeah, and so our real estate company, which is called MissionFirst Development, we started that in '98, and that still actually exists in a reduced form, but we're still there in Washington. And I started really being in the capital markets world, raising capital for affordable multifamily projects, spending a lot of time in sort of the money center cities, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, LA, traveling a lot at that point in my career for what was then known as Apollo Housing Capital.
Okay.
It was a little startup, and people always say this, but it's true. The world was different back then. I could be a real estate developer and get pretty big deals done without much of a balance sheet to back me up.
Yeah.
Just like these bankers could sort of raise, $100 million funds without a whole lot of their own money in the game. So we were sort of all flying by the seat of our pants, and really enjoying that aspect of it.
This is
I
way
loved it.
before 2008.
Exactly. Right before 2008 is exactly right. So that company, Apollo Housing, got bought by Royal Bank of Canada through a chain of events that I will spare you the details of. But that little company that when I started was 19 people, was over 100 people. We were doing probably $300 million a year of volume.
Wow.
And
Cool.
so at that time, making pretty good spreads on that, certainly enough to pay 100 people pretty well. When RBC Capital Markets bought this group, RBC was a public company. We were small private. They transitioned the leadership out of that company because they were definitely not public company guys, because they're just sort of, they were really like feral animals. They just got stuff done and they didn't care how it happened.
I understand.
They were not process people. So they invited me, and at the time I thought it was a great offer to go to Cleveland, Ohio and run that group. So I became a managing director in this big public company and
Your
ran that.
wife was super excited about moving to Cleveland, I'm sure.
See, that's what makes you special. You're a very insightful guy. You saw that from 10 miles away. That was a very easy sell.
Yeah.
And so, right. So we moved from the DC burbs to Cleveland. And actually, we ended up liking it there a lot. We made some great friends.
Okay. Yeah. Nothing. Yeah. I don't want to get any hate mail from my friends from Cleveland.
Yeah. We actually, I loved it because there's just a lot of ethnic communities there, really interesting kind of social and political environment.
Yeah.
And at the time, actually, the years we were there, Cleveland or Ohio voted for Obama in 2 consecutive elections, and now it's kind of gone extreme
Yeah. Interesting.
red. So it's been interesting to watch the politics of that state evolve. Anyway, so I had done that banking world, and then I'd been there, Apollo and RBC, for almost 10 years when I left.
Okay.
And then I went and did a couple little startup ventures. One, I would say, did not work at all. Be fair to say, it wasn't an epic failure. We didn't lose a lot of money, but we didn't make much money. And then it was sort of an financial intermediary, and we shut that down after 2 years. And then I ended up working for another private, fully integrated real estate company from 2013 to 2019.
Okay.
Running a little banking unit for them. And I really enjoyed that, had a great opportunity to grow that business, and then was summarily fired by my board of 4 in November of 2019 because we weren't ultimately aligned around our growth trajectory. So another way, I put it another way, they wanted to see growth like this. I was saying growth is going to be more like that. We're in a very mature market. The margins are down, and it's just not going to happen like that unless we buy something. So anyway, I left there in the fall of 2019, and then in early 2020, I started talking to Archway, and as a consultant, I really wasn't looking for a job. I'd been in the corporate world for a long time, and
Yep.
was ready to kind of not have a job anymore. So
yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And meanwhile, MissionFirst is still kicking off
yeah,
some revenue or some income, I'm guessing.
it is, and that's part of what gave me a lot of freedom over the years, because
I got you.
It was a good business, and it helped my partner and I immensely. It was steady. It was sort of like this financially, but it was never negative. It was always kind of either a little positive or a lot of positive, and it allowed us the flexibility to not always worry so much about where the next paycheck was coming from.
So what happened? Somebody you knew, let me guess, you knew somebody on the board for Archway, somebody in your circle, or like, I know a guy. I know a guy.
Actually, it's right. I sent an email out to a couple of locals, and I said, hey, I'm looking for new opportunities, which is code for I just got canned. And I'm interested. I'm starting to kind of, what was ironic, actually, I'm not sure that's the right word, but I'd been living in Colorado. We moved here in 2013.
Oh,
so I'd been here for 6 years, right?
I see. Okay.
But I'd been working nationally, so I'd done some transactions in Colorado, but I really didn't know a lot of people locally.
Okay.
So I immediately made the commitment to try to, expand my network of people in the housing and the finance worlds here, because I wanted to establish myself more locally. I didn't want to be getting on planes anymore. I'd done that for 20 years.
We could do a whole we could do a whole podcast episode on that, my friend. If I never have to fly again, it's totally fine with me.
Right. Right. I'm with you. So if I have to go to the airport, it's a bad day,
Oh, shoot. Oh, yeah.
It's a less than wonderful day, let's just say. So it was a relationship that connected me to the Archway board. That had been to be in a search at the time for a new executive director, and I told him I'd help him with the search, and 6 months later, I was that person, even though I really had not had that intention. But here I am, 3.5 years later.
3.5 years later. And congratulations on that. Now it's probably a perfect time for us to do a quick overview, if you don't mind. And I'm going to tell the listeners, by the way, it's archwaycommunities.org, archwaycommunities.org. Sebastian, you want to give us kind of the 2-3 minute overview for the listeners real quick?
Yeah, thanks. Archway is we're a 501c3. We've been around in some form or fashion since 1974. Our mission is to provide affordable housing for those in need, along with supportive services such as food security, food bank, job training, language training, mental health support through case management that we help provide, in all the array of services that people at all sort of points on the income spectrum and all points on the mental health or social needs spectrum show up with. And it's everything from people literally coming right off the street into our housing, and that's a special population with a particular set of needs, to formerly homeless veterans, to people with mental health and addiction issues of all sorts.
I was just about to say, does that include addiction too? And I guess so. I guess
it does. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because mental challenges often are accompanied by addiction issues, I'm assuming.
Yes. I mean, in the parlance of this world, you will hear about multiple morbidity issues. So you'll have physical issues, you'll have mental health issues, you'll have addiction.
Yeah.
You'll be poor. You'll sort of think about somebody with missing one leg. They're a drug addict and they're living on the streets, and then they come into your housing project, and they're not there. It takes a lot of support to help them succeed in that environment, because they're facing a lot of challenges. I mean, it goes without saying, but so that's what we do. And
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that you provided that. Okay. So my fault. I didn't know that it went as far as food, mental health care, etc. I thought it was primarily housing, but so it's all the above.
It's all the above. Now, to be clear, we don't provide case management for mental health or addiction, but we have a supportive services staff person, at least one at every property, and their responsibility is to make sure that if you have a particular need, that we're going to connect you with whatever support that you need in the market, such as it may be, which is
okay.
So in Jefferson County, we have a number of communities in Jefferson County, so we connect them with the Jefferson County Mental Health Agency, or in Denver similarly.
I see. Do you provide transportation for these folks to get to these facilities? Because I'm assuming that's a major issue.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. We do, and it is, and we do. We have most of our communities are in fairly well served public transportation lines, whether it's the light rail or the bus.
Okay.
But we also have Archway van service. So we do everything we can to get them where they need to be as well. But most people don't think about that as an issue, but it is.
Is there a time limit on how long somebody can stay in the housing, and do they get released if they get better? Like, how does all that work?
Yeah, there's not. It's sort of the other way. There's a minimum of a 1-year lease for the kinds of projects we do, mostly.
Okay.
As defined by the federal guidelines that provide the subsidies for us. But we have some folks that have been with us for 20 years, particularly in the more immigrant and refugee communities, so they'll be,
I see.
They'll create their own community there and they'll just stay.
And how do you qualify? I mean, can anybody just walk up and say, I need a place to live? How do you decide who gets in and who gets out?
Yeah, well, there's all sorts of federal fair housing guidelines, as you might imagine, but so you have to have a waiting list and it has to be equal access for anybody. But most of ours are income qualified, which means you have to have a demonstrated income of a certain amount, whether it's 20%, 30, 50% of the area median income. So you can't make too much money. You can't have a trust fund over there on the side. There's a whole process to go through that's called income qualification. And then we'll look at your background and say, are you, a violent offender, or do you have a record that is going to allow us to keep you out of this community? Sometimes we'll take you anyway, because frankly, many of our people do, and that's what we're there to help serve. But, if there's violence or sort of a history of really troublesome behavior that's just going to disrupt the community, then we won't, because we really have to make that decision about, we can't choose the one over the many in our communities. The communities, ideally, they're going to be stable. And so our residents are going to have to meet some sort of minimum standards for, I'll say, acceptable community behavior.
You said that. You said that very well. I want to make sure I understood something. So you have to have shown some ability to produce income of some kind. You can't just be unemployed, lay on the couch, eat potato chips, and do nothing.
You can actually. If you're destitute, if you're unemployed, unemployable, which of course many of our residents are that are in the worst sort of sociological economic shape, they'll get vouchers from a housing authority, or our veterans will get vouchers from the Veterans Administration. So let's just say you're a 60-year-old unemployed vet. You might get a housing voucher from the Veterans Administration, and you could bring that to one of our communities. So about 30% of our residents, I would say, fall into that category of they're not working, they're operating off of vouchers, and we're doing our best to serve them. And they are, without a doubt, unquestionably by a country mile, the most difficult to serve, the most challenging for the communities. And which came first, their unemployability or their mental health or addiction issues? It's all this sort of, whatever the opposite of a virtuous circle is, it's unvirtuous, I should say. And these things really reinforce each other, and it just, you go from bad to worse to worse to worse. And it's very difficult to get people out of that once they've fallen into it.
Yeah, that is not a black and white thing. That is a super gray, difficult pond to swim in, deciding whether or not they really could be a productive member of society, or could they be a little bit productive? Could they do something? Easy for me to, easy for guys like me to judge that and say, come on now, Sally, you can do something, but can she? I don't, it's debatable, right? And I'm sure you guys struggle with that all the time. I would think.
Well, we don't struggle with the question that you're asking yourself right there. We just accept it for what it is.
Okay.
And if that makes sense. And our approach is, we're going to try to meet you wherever you are, in the context of our ability financially and staff wise to actually serve you. We simply cannot serve everybody that we'd like to serve. We don't have the money, we don't have the units, we don't have the staff, we don't have the expertise, so we really try to limit ourselves to those we can serve. Although with these vouchers, you end up with a lot of people who are really, really difficult. And almost by your relationship with the Denver Housing Authority, or there's a group called the Metro Denver Housing Initiative. It's kind of a clearinghouse for homeless folks.
Okay.
They can sort of require you to take on some folks that you might not otherwise choose to do.
Somebody on your team is having to say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. That's got to be a kind of an emotional, tough job, I would think. I mean, that would be hard for me to kind of look at Sally and go, "Hey, you're not in," and then, "Okay, John, yes, good." Ooh, that might be hard.
It's really difficult. I'll just tell you one quick story that is happening for us in real time. We have a resident who was sent to us by MDHI, the Metro Denver Housing Initiative, with a voucher. This person was homeless, came to us. With our relationship with MDHI, we can't say no. So that the person has a voucher. It's a single person moving into a 1-bedroom unit. And that person is delusional and thinks our property manager has designs on hurting him. And
she's bipolar or schizophrenic or whatever.
Right. And so he's very menacing to our property manager, who doesn't feel safe in this person's presence.
I can see it.
But we have a really hard time evicting that person, because we have to figure out what lease violation he is, tripping over. So it's a very difficult situation. And, our property management and our resident service coordinator, they're really there to serve this person, but that person is actually threatening to them.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I know we're bumping up on time. I want to ask you a couple more questions.
Sure.
Really
Sure.
quick. By the way, my first wife is bipolar, and my sons deal with it all the time, and she probably should be committed somewhere. I mean, she's very bad. Schizophrenic, bipolar, like it's probably only a matter of time before she hurts somebody and ends up in the prison system, unfortunately. And same thing. She's been kicked out of these places where, just like what you're talking about, the apartment manager or whatever will be like, no, she's scaring me. Like she's
Right.
Bad situation. So I can only feel for your managers there, your facility managers. That's tough. I know we're almost out of time. By the way, I love what you do. I love what you're doing. It's a great mission to help people. You're able to put your skill sets and your experiences forward to make the world a better place, really, for a lack of better, terms. I know everybody says that, but you really are helping people, which I think is really cool. I think that's really cool. I got a couple of 30,000-foot questions for you, just really fast. These might be way out there. This might be too far out there, but I think these commercial real estate buildings are going to continue to empty out. I believe remote work is going to continue to happen. And if these interest rate continues to go up, and these guys they're strapped with these commercial buildings, and all of a sudden they can't afford these payments, and now they're down to 50% occupancy. And I think you're going to see some more crashing on these office buildings. That's my prediction. I am not a real estate expert, but I did listen to the Warren Buffett interview. Anyway, any chance you can capitalize on these assets, these buildings that might be there to repurpose for low-income housing needs? Any chance have you guys even thought about that? Am I just reaching to? Okay.
Yeah. In fact, the Denver Housing Authority is just completing an office conversion into a high-rise housing for its residents. So yeah, and I'll give you my quick take on it, which is I agree, and I think there's a lot of really smart, super charismatic, bald people out there who would agree with us, super smart, charismatic, bald people, that this is a huge opportunity for sure, because the space is there.
Yes.
I think there was sort of this early days, I'll say, thinking about it, maybe even pre-pandemic, post-financial crisis, that it would be easy somehow, and that the cost wouldn't be prohibitive. But the reality is proving that the costs really are extreme. So you have these buildings, but it doesn't really work so easily for the private sector.
The plumbing specifically would be a nightmare, I would think.
Well, actually, you're right. The plumbing, the HVAC, everything is different in residential than in commercial. It really is. So yeah, think about a bay of bathrooms versus every unit has to have its own bathroom, its own kitchen, and all that. So my point is, what my take is that the public sector is going to have to play a role in that, and that the city and the state and the federal government will ultimately and certainly should support the conversion, because in downtown Denver, as a really easy and obvious example, it's like a desert down in some parts of town at night.
Totally.
Wouldn't it be great if there were people there?
Yes.
Right. And so the city should want that. And so the city is going to have to help support it. It's really, really much more expensive and much more difficult than imagined. But I think it's going to happen. I think it's just going to be slower and more expensive than everybody hoped it would be.
Let's buy some plumbing franchises and hire a bunch of plumbers, because these guys are going to be busy for the next 15, 20 years.
I think so. I think the electricians are going to be busy converting everything to solar too.
Yeah,
for sure.
Totally. And we can wrap it up on that. The two safest jobs in America right now: plumbers and electricians. Congratulations, you guys are safe. All the software engineers, good luck.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Sebastian, I know I've kept you bumped you up. I know you probably have another meeting. You're super busy. Thank you, sir. I could keep going. I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but Really appreciate you and everything you guys are doing, and congratulations on an awesome career, great
Thank you.
family. I mean, sounds like, and you're gonna do this for a little while longer, right? You're not ready to retire yet, are you?
I'm not ready to hang on my spikes just yet, but you know, I'm looking out on the horizon, thinking about what might be coming next.
Okay.
Um,
All
but
right.
yeah, but thank you. And Steve, look, I always enjoy talking to you, and I've been really impressed by all of the good work that Riderflex does generally, but specifically for us. You guys were really a partner to us, and I think we still consider you a partner. So I suspect
Thank
we'll
you.
be working with you again soon.
I appreciate it, sir.